Good morning, Desiree. We are here outside the Cape Town police station where Bossa leader Mmusi Maimane is going to lay criminal charges against people whom he is saying that they are implicated in corruption scandal at Eskom. We know that Eskom is currently running various stages of load shedding, which they change from day to day depending on what capacity of the grid is. He's gonna get inside and lay those criminal charges, but before he does that, as the media, we're waiting to hear from him. What is it about? Mr. Maimane, talk to the media about today.
Good morning, and good morning to fellow South Africans. I think all of us today find it abnormal that we wake up to a stage of load shedding. The first thing anyone does when they get up is to check what stage of load shedding and when they will have electricity. Now, if you want to destabilize any country, anywhere in the world, you do so by destroying its energy supply. Now, all of us know quite clearly, as we listen to Mr. Ruyter, that it would seem there are a few people who are committed to destroying this country, who in my view are acting in a treasonous manner to destroy the interests of this country. We also know equally so that when we launched BOSA, or Build One South Africa, we committed ourselves in our 10-point plan to say we will fight corruption and return those resources back to the fiscus. Today begins that journey. It starts typically, as we saw in cases like Nkandla. You will recall when Nkandla started, we had a newspaper article, we went out, opened the case, then began to investigate it through parliamentary means, public protector, and held Mr. Jacob Zuma accountable. Now today is the start towards that journey. And I'm here today to open a criminal case, really highlighting a number of key things. The first is that, as we all know, PRECA compels anyone who has got information that pertains to corruption needs to come and open a criminal investigation. I'm requesting that the allegations that Mr. Ruyter has put together, that the South African Police Service be compelled to come and get a written affidavit for him to confirm the following. The first is the said identity of the high-ranking ANC politician he speaks about. Secondly, the identity of the cabinet minister who he highlights. Thirdly, whether Mr. Ruyter has complied with his obligation under section 34.2 of PRECA in respect to high-ranking ANC politician, and whether Mr. Ruyter has complied with his obligation under section 34.2 of PRECA in respect of the cabinet minister. As all of us know, section 34.1 of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, PRECA as it's commonly known, wants to ensure that any person who holds a position of authority, who knows or reasonably would have known or suspected that any person has committed an offense of corruption in terms of the section of the Act involving an amount of 100,000 or more, must report such knowledge or suspicion to the police. If Mr. Ruyter has not done so, I am here today to ensure that that gets done. Because what we need is the beginning of a case number that will unfold this issue. Secondly, if he has reported this knowledge of corruption to the police, he and the SABC would need to provide proof of reporting. Thirdly, that the reporting guide as published by the South African Police Service referred to the directions as published in the Government Gazette number 35949 of the 7th of December 2012 under 1028. That importantly, the reporting guide refers to Annexure B, which I've attached to my affidavit that is here. Mr. Ruyter is compelled, but secondly and more than anything, I'm here to lay charges against Mr. Pravin Gordhan. I hold the absolute view that he, as he has confirmed, was the minister who was informed. Now, in criminal act, if you collude with somebody to say we are clear that a crime is occurring, that in fact action should have been taken, Mr. Pravin Gordhan is equally compelled to come to the SABC to be investigated on this issue. He was the Minister of Public Enterprises at the time, And it is not my obligation to provide him with proof or evidence. My job as a citizen acting on behalf of the people of this country is to come and ask the police to investigate, to compel him to provide evidence and ensure, A, that he was informed by Mr. Ruyter, what exactly he was informed by Mr. Ruyter. The third and most crucial component of why we are here to lay charges is to say that if a cabinet minister, of which Mr. Pravin Gordhan is part of, and there were acts that were taking place at Eskom, he should, by law, have reported it to cabinet and by further extension should have informed the president. So thirdly, I'm not going to allow Mr. Ramaphosa to lay off the hook here. I will certainly be requesting for cabinet to ensure that it suffices whether an investigation did in fact take place. Furthermore, whether the president took any particular action upon allegations of corruption, particularly that sabotage a state-owned enterprise and a national key point as is Eskom. That as the president confirmed that he, at the State Capture Commission, that the African National Congress is accused, number one, and therefore what actions did he take? When was he informed? And ultimately, is he still satisfied that he's acting in line with his executive oath of office, which states quite categorically that he will defend the Constitution and all of its related laws? If PRECA is being violated here, the president must be the first citizen to act in defense against this. I hold in front of me a complete criminal complaint, an affidavit, a transcript that speaks to the issues that Mr. Ruyter has raised, and ultimately, as part of the annexures, this begins the legal process of getting to the bottom of what the sabotage that is taking place at Eskom. I thank you.
In other words, you don't have evidence, you're just throwing a stone in the bush hoping that an animal will come out?
It's not about having to provide evidence. Let's be clear about a couple of things. Anyone stands up in public and says a crime is taking place and fails to report it, must report it to the police. I've submitted an annexure. I'm asking Mr. Ruyter to come before us. Secondly, I'll be serving the president with a legal letter asking him to explain what his actions were and what steps did he himself take. And furthermore, it is not my job, as I state categorically, to come and bring evidence from Eskom. It is the job of the police to go fetch that evidence. And therefore, I feel that, as we saw in Nkandla, remember, Nkandla started off with allegations that there was security upgrades taking place. They had to be investigated by the public protector. I'm not an investigator. I'm a citizen acting on behalf of the people of this country, asking for accountability. That's the action I want to take.
Are you joining others in calling for Ruyter to name the minister or ministers he's referring to?
I'm not just joining others. I'm asking the police to compel him to do so, because PRECA says so. If you want to act in the right prescribes of the law as a whistleblower, he must be compelled by law to come and name the people. It's like if I know a crime is taking place, I can't sit back and just in conjecture not mention names. People must come and be accountable. And if Pravin Gordhan also knows, he must do so. Furthermore, I'll be firing the cabinet minutes that whether this matter was discussed in cabinet or not, so we get to the bottom of corruption. It's ultimately, as the beginning of state capture, you'll remember, I raised it in parliament. I then proceeded to write to the public protector. We had a state capture commission. Today begins that journey. Trust me, this is the beginning of a long battle that we will fight against this particular executive who have failed to keep the lights on. But worse than that, it's not that they've failed to keep the lights on. Now they themselves are now acting against the interests of the people of this country.
Mr. Maimane, do you think he should still come to Parliament, even though he is now resigned, to come and give the kind of evidence that you are asking him to do here at the police station?
What Parliament ought to do is to effectively establish an ad hoc committee in this regard. And what, in that instance, if it doesn't fall under the ambit of the committee task by the Ministry of Energy and that portfolio committee, Mr. Ruyter can be subpoenaed to come to that. But it can't just be Mr. Ruyter. Here, Parliament seeks political accountability. Mr. Gordhan must appear, Mr. Mantashe must appear, and so should the President. the first question the president must answer when he comes for the question and answer session is, what did he know? He can't just sit on the sidelines whilst South Africans are sitting in stage 6. So therefore, that committee must be tasked with subpoenaing those individuals, but ultimately, what the criminal process is to do, it must go interview Mr. de Ruyter so that he furnishes the police with an appropriate affidavit that goes from there.
Mr. Maimane, you've come to this police station many times over the years in various political guises. How much faith do you have that the police is going to do what you're asking of them?
I think naturally, as we began even with the State Capture Commission, if we had other avenues to report a crime, I would do so. But the South African law compels me to come to a police station. So I must begin here. And then next, I must go to a court. And then I must deal with the processes as laid out in law for me. So therefore, if the police fail to act here, we will force them to act. We will take accountability on this issue. But I'm afraid they are the door of first call. And that's why we're here today.
Mr. Maimane, so we as Netwerk 23 has very reliably learned that Mr. de Ruyter already last year informed police at a very high level about all the allegations. If that is true, what must now happen?
I must be finished with that case number as a complainant today, because that's part of why we are here, to register as a complainant. And then furthermore, I must be supplied with the evidence that that in fact did take place. And then I want to understand from the police commissioner what action was taken. I will tell you this. When we opened a case against Mr. Zuma, many people said when they came, they said, no, the police are not going to do anything, it's a criminal. But it served as fundamental evidence when you then go to processes like the state capture, SIU, etc. This then must begin there. So I must be supplied with both those things so that our legal team is able to take the appropriate action as to where we go from there. I am sick of corruption in this country. I say that it's destroying our country. We should live on what? Stage 8. Because there are a few politically connected criminals that are in the ANC that now want to hide. And they must send their Secretary General to come and tell us that in fact, no, they are poor corruption. If they are poor corruption, they must come, reveal those ministers, and if there's a cabinet reshuffle, the first starting point is to fire that minister so that they don't use state resources to protect themselves. We must as South Africans be sick and tired of what is going on with this government and failing to protect the people of this country.
There are reports that Mr. de Ruyter is going to leave the country. Would you say, as your party, he must not be allowed to leave the country because it's going to be difficult for him to come back and testify once the case starts going to court?
Mr. Grizi was in hospital when the State Capture Commission took place. We found mechanisms for him to provide evidence. We must find evidence. We must find processes in the Whistleblower Protection Act that allows Mr. de Ruyter to come. He can't just be allowed, whether he's here or he's overseas. This is not like he's disappearing to a planet that is unreachable. Doesn't matter where he is compelled by law to provide the evidence that he stated. So to me, whether he's in country or not in country, he must come and provide evidence. The only people I worry about fleeing are these ministers that have been highlighted in the state. Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
That was the BOSA leader, Mmusi Maimane, as he's going to get inside the Cape Town police station to lay criminal charges against people whom he says they have benefited from corruption at Eskom. He's mentioned the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, as one of the ministers that he's going to open a case against him, as well as the former CEO of Eskom, Andre de Ruyter, saying that Mr. de Ruyter must reveal the name of the minister or ministers whom he has made allegations against them that they have used the Eskom for the benefit of the party. With that, back to you at the studio, Desiree.
Lulama, while we still have you, you asked a pertinent question to Mr. Maimane, and I don't know if you're satisfied with his response, just in terms of what concrete evidence he is bringing to this process that he's undertaking today.
Desiree, he says that it's not his duty to bring evidence. He is not bound to bring evidence. He is a politician. He is taking the route of being a politician. He's coming here at the police station to open a case, and it will be the duty of a law enforcement agencies to bring evidence on board to prove the allegations that he's making against the people that he has named here. He says he does not have evidence. It's not his duty to bring evidence. The relevant law enforcement agencies must do their job and bring evidence. That's right.
And also one would think that he's getting ahead of himself, wanting to bring charges against Pravin Gordhan when Andre de Ruyter himself has not opened a case against Pravin Gordhan. So at this stage, it's really allegation.
Yeah. Yes, Desiree, Mr. de Ruyter, what he says, he has just told us here, he says he was informed that Mr. de Ruyter, actually it was a question that was posed by journalists to him, that there are reports that Mr. de Ruyter did open a case, and he's saying that if that is the case, he wants to be furnished with that case number so that he can take the process forward. Besides that, Desiree, he's saying that he's referring us to the Nkandla saga. He's saying that when the Nkandla saga started surfacing, it was exactly like this situation, and as political party they took up the matter. He is now doing that, following in those footsteps, hoping that in future there will be an investigation around this Eskom matter that will lay on the table, that will lay bare what happened around what the allegations that have been made by Mr. de Ruyter, that the ANC was using Eskom as its cash cow. Desiree.